So in today's video, I wanted to talk about how professional jazz musicians learn jazz standards, because it's something that I see a lot of my jazz students struggling with, and it's something that there's a lot of noise about on the YouTube and a lot of guys on Reddit telling you things. But I wanted to tell you kind of from the horse's mouth, from a professional jazz musician, how I like to learn tunes, what I've learned over the hundreds of tunes that I have learned, and some forgotten over the years, and just give you kind of the best practices so that you get them sticking in your head and you get them so that you can kind of memorize them. Because people always talk about, or I feel like when I was first getting into jazz, people would always talk about the importance of learning tunes, and I never fully understood why for a couple of years, and it really does just make all the difference. So here's kind of the step-by-step process that I use when I learn a tune. The first thing that I do, and that I hope you will do after watching this video, is listen to multiple versions of the tune. I recommend that you listen to at least 2 versions by 2 different singers. The trick for this is that a lot of jazz standards are actually show music. Sometimes people don't know this because we're so far removed from when these songs were written in the 1920s through the 1940s. But a lot of what we would call jazz standards are from the Great American Songbook. And those were the songs written by typically Jewish composers in New York for the Broadway plays of the time. And a lot of them lived in Tin Pan Alley. And anyways, a lot of these tunes have lyrics. Now, the thing about learning tunes from a vocalist's version is you get to hear the lyrics, so the melody will stick in your head much stronger if you have some words that you can tie it to as well, versus if you just learn it from an instrumental version. For every single standard that has words that I know, I'm singing those in my head while I'm playing them. For example, if I was playing I'll Be Seeing You, I'm playing the melody notes of G, F, F, E flat, D, E flat, A flat. But in my head, I'm going, I'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places, love this heart of mine embraces all day through. Now you can really tell that I'm a guitarist and guitar teacher, not a vocalist, but I know the words to these songs. So listening to at least 2 different versions by 2 different singers will help get you kind of in the feel of it. And then the other 3 versions of tunes, I would say find some famous instrumental versions. Spotify, Apple Music, whatever you use. Personally, I use Apple Music because I just loathe Spotify as a company, as a working musician. But whatever you use to stream music, you'll be able to find multiple recorded versions of most standards. Listen to some of the top ones that come up and just see what they do. And this is a really important thing, because some tunes have certain intros or certain outros or certain bass lines or certain things that you might be expected to know if you find yourself playing with other jazz musicians. For example, All the Things You Are has a very commonly played intro. And if you don't know that, you might be kind of crap out of luck if you go to a jam session and people start playing this thing that you don't know. So listening to at least 3 versions with instrumentalists is kind of the next step that you would take. Now, the next step would be either transcribing it or sourcing some sheet music. If you are not at the level where you can transcribe by ear, that's totally okay. I started learning this music by reading sheet music, lead sheets for it. But I would try to start working on it as soon as possible, because it's really not actually as hard as it sounds. And music that I learned by ear stays with me for life, whereas music that I learned by reading it off of a sheet tends to evaporate quickly. So even if you only catch a couple chords or a general key center by listening with your ear at first, keep doing it and keep pushing yourself to get better at that, because it's an invaluable skill being able to use your ears to figure out this music. But the next thing that I would do is figure out what the form is. So there's kind of 3 really common forms that I want to talk about. But there are more forms than this. But you want to be aware of the form, because if you know the structure, you can recognize it. Like a good silly kind of analogy for this is the McDonald's golden arches. If we see it, we know that there's a McDonald's there. If you see the structure of a tune, you can fill it in a little bit easier. So jazz tunes, especially more traditional ones, tend to flow in 8-bar sections. They tend to be around 32 bars long. And the 2 most common song forms that you would see there are either AABA, which is where it's the same part essentially 3 times. It's the A section. So you would play 2 of the exact same, then you would play a bridge, and then you would play the A section again. So a great example off the top of my head would be a tune like On the Sunny Side of the Street. That is an AABA tune. So it's basically the melody is incredibly similar, the lyrics are different, and the chords are exactly the same in all of the A's. And then there's a bridge, and then it goes back to the A section. So being aware of that helps you kind of piece it together and learn to hear it. A great way to get used to feeling these forms is to figure out what form the song is and then listen to it again, trying to hear when the A section goes into the second A section, when it goes into the bridge, and when it goes into the last A. The next most common tune form, I would say, is ABAC, which is where basically it's two 16-bar forms, or two 8, how do I want to describe this? Essentially, there's two A sections that are exactly the same, but it goes A, so 8 bars, then it goes to a different 8 bars, that's the B section, then it goes back to the first 8 bars in terms of chord progression and probably a relatively similar melody, and then there's a different C section at the end of it. That's another really, really common tune. For example, All the Things You Are is really an A, B, C, D. Out of Nowhere is the tune that's in the top of my head. That's kind of an A, B, A, C kind of tune. So there's a lot of them out there. If you Google this, I'm sure there's a huge list of standards, but getting used to the form, and then again, listen to the song again, whatever your favorite version is, and try to hear the form as it goes through. Okay, now that we have listened to the tune, we've checked out kind of what it sounds like, what the lyrics are, we've checked out the form of the song, the next step that I would take is learning the melody. Now, the melody is kind of, in my opinion, the most important part of the song. There are different people who will say different things about this, and we're all right, is kind of the frustrating thing about this. But there are many different ways to kind of view this music. But for me, I love knowing the melody because it lets me kind of quote it in solos. It lets me kind of have this through line of the tune. And so one of the best things that you can do for a melody is play just the melody like literally 100 times. I once took a guitar lesson with I've taken a couple lessons with Peter Bernstein. He's a fantastic jazz guitarist in New York City, if you don't know him. And he told me that when he used to be learning tunes, he would play the melody 100 times, just as straight as possible. Now, it's probably not actually 100 times, but he would play it for a long time without getting fancy or adding any embellishments. So for example, the tune that I've been working on lately is a beautiful old standard called The End of a Love Affair. And the melody goes... And I just played that a million times. It keeps going. It's an AAB. This is an AABAC form, is what you would call it. It's got an extra 8 bars at the end. But going through these tunes and learning them, like just play the melody. Say the lyrics to yourself while you do it. On the guitar, I would say learn the melody in a couple different ranges. So again, for example, I learned The End of a Love Affair in this higher octave where it's... So while I learned it in that higher register so that I could play it as a chord melody, I also could play you the same melody. Sorry. I could play it for you in a lower register. I could also play you the same notes higher up the neck. So don't be lazy when you learn the melody and only kind of half learn it in one spot. Really play it a lot to the point where you can't get it wrong. And the other huge thing, if you are learning the melody from sheet music, practice getting it off of the page so that you just know the melody of the song. Think of it like Happy Birthday. You do not need to look at sheet music. You just need to spend a couple seconds figuring out. You want it to be in your head. You want to have it totally down. So that's how I would go about learning the melody. Think about the lyrics, work on getting it off the page, and learn it in at least 2 places on the instrument. Because in the process of doing that, you will learn it even better and you'll know what notes are in it without even thinking. Now, the next step would be learning the chords. Or you could do this before the melody. These last two steps are kind of interchangeable. So when you're learning the chords, again, having this kind of structure of what the tune looks like is going to be hugely beneficial in terms of putting it together. So for example here, if I were to use a really common jazz standard, why don't I do, I'm gonna do On the Sunny Side of the Street. I was talking about that earlier. So that song starts with a bar of C major 6, then a bar of E7, then a bar of F major, then minor 2-5, so B flat minor, or B minor 7 flat 5, E7 altered to A minor 7, to D7, to D minor 7, to G7, to C. So that's the A section. Then it does it again because it's an AABA tune. And what you do is, at first I would focus on just trying to piece together sections. So if you can learn the A section, learn how to play that over and over and over again without having to look at the page. Because again, if you can keep the chords in your head, and even if it's slow, if you go, okay, what's next? I think it was E7. Yep, okay, and then F major 7, I think. Yep, and then 2, 5 to 6, whatever it is. Go through it slowly and build it piece by piece until you can play through an entire form without getting lost, without getting confused, without looking at the sheet music. You want to have this in your head so that you can freely improvise over it and freely improvise your comping over it. Now, then comes the fun step of harmonic analysis, which depending on your theory knowledge might be a little bit tricky. But when I look at On the Sunny Side of the Street, I would call out the chords like this. So it's 1, because it's in the key of C, 3 dominant, 4 major, F major is the 4 chord. Then I say 2, 5 to 6 minor. So rather than thinking B flat or B minor 7 flat 5, E7 altered, I am just thinking what that motion is, and it's a 2, 5, and it's going to 6. So I think 2, 5, 6. Then it's 2 dominant. Then it's 2 minor 7, then 5. And if you can think about the tune that way, it's a really, really good way to go. Now, when you're learning a tune, again, the good signs are that you can play the melody without looking at the sheet music. You can play the chords without looking at the sheet music. And if you want to kind of test your knowledge, or maybe you work a job or you have to go commute, whatever it is that you don't have as much time as you would like to play the guitar, what I would do in that case is listen to the song and see if you can say the chords in your head while the band is playing the song. That's a fantastic way to get tunes in your head. I used to do it all the time back when I was in university. But anyways, I hope you found this list of how to go through a jazz standard and learn it like a pro useful. If you did, I'd really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe. It really helps me out more than you could know. If you want to take a guitar lesson with me, there's a link to get in touch with me down in the description. I would love to work with you on whatever's troubling you on the guitar. If you're looking for a way to support me in the free educational content that I put out here on the channel, you can subscribe to my Patreon, also linked down below. All of my patrons get early access to videos as well as cool behind-the-scenes sneak peeks at stuff that I'm working on, so I'd love to see you over there. If you're looking for a different way to support the channel, I do have an ebook and a video course for sale, also linked down in the description. It's a great way to support what I do, and again, you get some really great, more in-depth content than I can share in a 10 to 15 minute YouTube video. And last but not least, I have at least 2 new videos coming out every single week, so I hope I'll see you in the next one, and until I do, I'll wish you a wonderful day, and I hope you have some fun playing the guitar. Thanks.